Carrie from Red Curtain Addict, and we have another episode of Behind the Curtain that I am personally very excited about. We're going to sit down with Nicolette Blount, who has created a brand new production that's hitting the stage called Savage the Musical. Nicolette had a great-grandmother named Wanda Savage, who is a Chickasaw sharpshooter in the 1920s and made her way to vaudeville and Hollywood as a silent film actress. This journey throughout the musical follows her story as a woman and a Native American pushing through to find her own destiny. And as a fellow Native American myself from Oklahoma, I have been following their stories and posts on Instagram, reached out to Nicolette and said, tell me more. So today that's what's going to happen. I can't wait to invite her on. Before I do, I want to show you a quick clip of some of this musical that she filmed in New York City. Let's take a look.
Time for your makeover!
We can make you look more hot, more glamorous, more
White.
pallid. I think it's time to reinvent you and make you shine. You'll be like clear apple. She's a star, don't you know? A makeover is what you need. Just follow my cue and take my lead. With just a few tweaks, we can make you go from savage to chic. So lighten up your gloomy attitude, lighten up your shade or two, lighten up, part off that weighted hair. Nobody will know you're an Indian heir. So lighten up, lighten her up.
All right, so now that we're back, let's welcome on Nicolette. Hi, Nicolette. It's so good to see you.
Hi, nice to see you, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I have just been following your production of, this new musical that we're all excited about, we're all anticipating. And Savage the Musical, to me, has really hit a chord because I'm a fellow Native American with you. But before we get into it, tell us, for those that are not familiar with it just yet, what this musical is all about.
Oh boy, that's a long story. It is about my great grandmother, Wanda Savage, who was a Chickasaw starlet in the 1920s. I am also a registered Chickasaw, and it is about her life. We had to kind of cut some things down because it's just, she had so many kids. I didn't want it to be like Sound of Music. But in a nutshell, it's about a mother, an Indigenous mother, who's wants to make her way in life, and she has this amazing ability to shoot without aiming, bows and arrows, guns. And she gets discovered in a circus, and then she starts moving forward in her career, and it's about her facing misogyny, racism, abuse. We even have in Act 2 where she's forced into, or they try to force her into, a lavender marriage. So for those who don't know what that is, back in the day, if you were gay, Hollywood would try and make you or encourage you, or make you, whatever you want to call it, to have a marriage with someone who was either also gay, or the opposite sex, also gay, or someone who just was willing to do it to make it look like you were straight.
Wow.
And it was a really, really sad thing. But the core of the story is her and her son, and her overcoming abuse and misogyny and all these things to make her way in Hollywood, but having to sacrifice her son in the process. Women didn't have many choices back then.
Mm-hmm.
And especially Native American women, because when women were given the right to vote, most people probably don't know this, but women were given the right to vote. Native American women were not. So she's not only a woman in this era of just women not having much of a choice, but she's also a Native American woman.
Mm-hmm.
And then Hollywood did some, from what I can tell in pictures, like some cultural whitewashing, things like that. We kind of get into that in the show a little bit. ultimately she ends up in a brothel, and then she tries to turn her life around. So it's a story about redemption.
Wow. And this is your great grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a story. And then, like I mentioned earlier, this definitely resonates with me. I'm from Oklahoma, and she was coming from a reservation in Oklahoma. And my lineage is Choctaw and Cherokee.
And Choctaw's our cousin, because Chickasaws came from Choctaw.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And just hearing, I love history, right? And it sounds like you love that too. And just hearing the stories of what our families, went through as Native Americans, getting their land in Oklahoma from Choctaw, and making their way, right? And saying this is our land, and I have a voice and I have rights. And I remember too, when I went to college in Arkansas, I went to the University of Arkansas, and a part of the campus was a section of the Trail of Tears. And in that, they had almost teardrop lights that marked where this was on the campus. And I remember just walking down that to class, doing music business, music classes, things like that, and having this sense of sadness, but also a sense of determination. For those that were before me, I have the opportunities as a woman to have education, to have a voice, all these different things. And all those things behind me, all those amazing people push me forward to say, what can I do, right? To be representative of my family, right, of all the women before me, and all of the Native Americans. So my question for you, Nicolette, is, it sounds like this has really impacted your life, the story of Wanda. I would love to hear a little bit more about, when did you first hear about the story, and what made you, consider putting this out there and to the world and letting it be known?
Growing up, I always heard about her from my mom, aunt, mostly my grandpa, who's her son. And in the show, we deal with her relationship with my grandpa, and we don't talk about any of the other kids. And so I always heard these stories. No one in my family was a performer except for me. I kind of came out of my mom's stomach singing, and everyone's like, where's she getting this from? So my dad was musical, but he never did anything with it. My grandmother, his mom, sang in big bands and stuff. So she was a big influence on me with music. But so I knew that she was the other performer on that side of the family that I never knew. And then hearing all these stories, I always felt like this connection to her, almost like, and I would hear stories of like, and I think my family still doesn't have a really good reason of why she went to the brothel. It was like, oh, she needed money. And I'm thinking to myself, the woman acted with Mildred Harris, who's Charlie Chaplin's first wife, Jack Hoxsey, who was a huge Western star in silent movies, Anna Q. Nielsen. Like, how do you just all of a sudden go to a brothel because you need money? So I know she had a temper. I know that she was your best friend, but you don't want to piss her off. And I think she pissed someone off and they blackballed her. And that's what I think. And I think that, and this, I have really no proof for this, but this is what we've put into the story. And that's why we're calling it Inspired By, because there's some dramatical license we've taken in her story. Parts of it are true, parts are dramatized. But yeah, I've always had this connection with her. Also, once I became a mom, it was like, it's really hard to be a performer and a mom. And imagine being Native American in a time where women didn't own businesses, and women, 1920s, and we were just starting to have a voice. Wanda was a force to be reckoned with. She had her own business cards that she made. Whoa. There's things where like she crossed out, like it put someone else's name first and she crossed it out and wrote her name in.
Like, this will work.
Oh yeah. She made her own costumes. And that's another connection I have, because I went to fashion design school. First I went to school for theater and music, and then put my husband through school because he's a surgeon. And then I went back to school for fashion design. So that's another thing that I have a connection with her on. And they say she made all these costumes with no patterns or anything. She just made them. But back in the day, a lot of people were sewing, but she made some amazing things. And I just, and being that my first birthday was there, then fast forward to 2017, I believe, or maybe 2016. So both of my parents died really young from cancer. Neither one of them smoked or drank, nothing. It was both rare cancers. My mom died of glioblastoma, and my dad died of salivary gland cancer. So when my dad passed away, or no, I take that back. When my dad was fighting cancer, I wrote this song called Eagle's Wings, and it was about his fight with cancer. And I recorded it, and I wrote it and recorded it. When our hope is gone, when there's nowhere left to turn. And then I did it to encourage him in his battle with cancer. Well, then when he passed away, we had it played while his casket was going down. Then my mom dies a few years later, and we play it while her casket's going down. Well, after that song, I didn't write anything for 7 years until Savage.
Wow.
So it was like 7 years. And for someone who writes music, that's just like crazy for you to go that long with just like nothing. And I tried, but I was really in a bad place. I was really sad. You know, not knowing that they're not going to see my kids grow up and things like that. You know, it sucks.
Absolutely.
And so, so 2016, I was in a show here locally at Duke Theater, which is where we're having our first production. And it was like the opening of their theater, and it was like talking about like all past shows they've done and stuff. Cause they would usually, their performing arts company started, and they would do stuff at local high school theaters and stuff. But now they're opening their own theater, and they did a song. And I thought, that's a really pretty song, but what show is that from? And I found out that it was a show that the owner of the theater had written with his son. And I'm thinking to myself, I could write a musical. And because, you know, I've always been in musical theater. I've written books, I've written poems, I've been writing music for a very long time. And then I thought, well, what would I write on? And I was like, Wanda. I would totally write it on Wanda.
Like Wanda.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like a distant cousin, I'm not sure if she's like my second cousin, but she had made a documentary on my grandmother that is on Amazon called Wanda the Wonderful. Shout out to her. It's a great documentary. And I remember when I watched that, I remember thinking, this needs to be a movie. Like, this woman's life is just crazy. Like, a documentary does not do it justice. It needs a movie. But then once I was in that local production celebrating the opening of the theater, that's when the thought came to me about the musical. And then tying it back to my parents, the first song I wrote is called Never Too Far Away. And I wrote it thinking, and it's still like this in the show today, that Wanda was in her dressing room writing a letter to her son, Paul, because she wrote tons of letters to her son, Paul, many of which never got mailed. And so I thought of this song of like her writing in her dressing room and him being wherever he is. And they sing kind of a duet from different parts of the United States or the country or whatever. And so once I recorded it in the studio with John, he's my co-composer. And I heard it back. I remember driving home and I was listening to it and I was like, oh my gosh, because the chorus is, I'm gone, but I'm never too far away. And in your heart, I'll stay. Just call my name. Have faith, for there will be a day when I'll be by your side. We'll be together someday. And I was like, oh my gosh, just like my parents talking to me from the grave.
Yeah, I have goosebumps. Oh my gosh.
And then I realized like how healing, not only was Savage ended up being bigger than what I ever thought it would be, how healing it has been for me in regards to that, and how my mom, being Wanda Savage's granddaughter, how it's all like connected.
Wow. What amazing like feeling that it has such there's such purpose to this. Like it was as you really were here to tell her story in this way at a perfect time. You know, these things happen for a reason, right? And for you to find that passion, but also find healing in the process, which is amazing to hear.
And she also died of cancer, which is weird. So young, she died younger than my parents. So, you know, ancestors or whatever, however people believe, you know, it's like, it's just a weird connection. And if my parents didn't die, I don't know if I would have ever written Savage.
Is this the first time that's really more choreographed with like a full production that's going to happen in April? Wow.
Yes. We're calling it a developmental performance because We don't have a Broadway producer attached to the show yet. Our intention was not only to show everyone locally who's excited about the show, but also for us as writers to see it on its feet. I mean, after 5 years of work, like, you know, we've done tons of readings, and it's like, okay, we have to like somehow see it. So, I mean, it's a full performance. It's choreographed, everything, but not by any of the Broadway people. But to me, I think it's a great show for being community theater. We're very blessed to have very good local actors, who some of which are on the CD or the EP and the singles that are streaming. So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think it's really good.
It's
I mean,
amazing. And so
when I have the cast crying, you know, when it's not their turn to be on scene, and when they're waiting for their scene to come up and they're in the audience, like crying because of what they're seeing. I mean, I'm just like, wow, what have I done here? Or what have we done here?
Very powerful. That's what you've done.
Yeah.
Amazing story that needs to be shared. And it sounds to me too, Nicolette, when you mentioned that she was a sharpshooter and she did circus, it reminded me a little bit of Annie Get Your Gun, because she did something similar. I mean, it's definitely not the same story, but she was a sharpshooter. She did circus. She like had her own journey. But it was just like, wow, this is a whole, like, her story as a Native American who had to go through so many, you know, trials and, you know, stipulations, that she was determined. And that's what I love. It sounds like the underlying momentum is that she was not going to just take it. She was going to make her own way, if you will. I love that.
We'd even talked about embracing the Annie Get Your Gun, because she would have been before Wanda. We've even talked about embracing that maybe somewhere in the show. We haven't yet, not in this rewrite, but I don't know. We know there's going to be that comparison. But then when you see the show, it's like nothing like it.
Completely different.
And she also, you know, being that she was a silent film actress, we have that whole thing. And then also being a mother.
Yeah. You know, and speaking about these women, as it's Women History Month, and I'm so excited for this to you know, come in April, and as we prepare our hearts and all the cast and crew for it. Tell me more about some women that has inspired you to become a producer. I mean, that's so exciting to compose. Beyond Wanda, it sounds like she's a huge inspiration in your life. Has there been, you know, women along the way that you're like, wow, that's something that continues to move you forward?
I mean, I'm really bad at names. I could tell you, but if I look at their Instagram, I could, you know, I would say, I mean, just Wanda has really inspired me, because she did everything. And I feel like it wasn't my intention to be a producer. It wasn't my intention that the show ended up, you know, like, I just found out today we have 10,000 streams of our music. Like, I didn't think I was going to have, I mean, I didn't think I was going to have, you know, the last total was like over 8,000 or 9,000 social media followers between all the social medias. Like, I didn't know any of that was going to happen. So I just kind of started like, oh, I'm going to write a musical. I'm just going to let people know how I'm going to do it. Maybe it'll help someone else. And it's kind of had this life of its own. I didn't intend on being a producer, but now my husband and I co-produced Regina Comet in New York. It was an off-Broadway show with Cody Lassen, Tony Award-winning producer. And then also we're investors on the new Broadway museum coming up. So like, I didn't set out planning to be a producer. I started out planning to be, you know, to write the musical. I've always been a songwriter and a lyricist. And I just kind of, I mean, of course, there's plenty of people that I look up to in Broadway.
I'm curious, Nicolette, what is after this developmental production? What's next? What's your next, you know, chapter of this? Is the hope to obviously make your way to New York? Is it to tour the performance in other areas? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So we have, an upcoming 54 Below show that's being planned. or we're planning it. I have a producer who wants to produce a concert of ours at Feinstein's 54 Below.
Oh, exciting.
So that's hopefully in development. She also mentioned, let's try and get your dream cast. So that will be exciting. We'll see what happens with that. We also are planning an industrial reading, which would be, inviting all the producers to come and see the songs and the story and whatnot. And then beyond that, my goal is, of course, to have a female producer take this on, a strong female producer. And I'm not going to settle. Like, in terms of, I could so easily have, because I've had some male producers approach me. I could so easily have them take it on, and I'm so honored. I really am. And I would love for them to be part of the process, because usually there's like 50 million producers anyways. But I think because this show is about such a strong woman, I think it's so important to have like a lead producer who's female. And I don't want it to be me, because I'm tired. I'd be like, here you go, take it. Like, I mean, I think maybe some people are afraid that, like, or fearful that, like, I'm gonna be like so like micromanaging. And honestly, that no, I'm only doing it like because I don't have an option right now.
Well, but it shows too that, like, you wanted other people's opinions. You, like,
Yes.
you mentioned earlier that yes, you probably could have done all the writing yourself, etc. But it shows us that you're open. You're like, no, I want to be challenged. I want to see another, view on things, because sometimes you can get too close to your own work, which I can totally relate to. But I love that you're making way for an opportunity for a woman to take this on with you, to share a woman. And that's something exciting about this Women's History Month, is like, what can we do to champion each other, right? To uplift each other, because Nicolette, I really appreciate your honesty, because being a creator of a Broadway, upcoming, I believe it's going to Broadway. That's where I see it going.
Thank you.
But you've already had such success with the streams and your community and having Wanda's story being told. But I'm so excited for where this is going, and I want to know, what can we do, if we're not local to Massachusetts, to see this in April 1st through the 3rd, which, man, I really want to be there. How can we continue to support you, right? How can we stay connected to you and your production, so that we can, make sure this gets heard from all those people? This needs to be out there.
Well, we have a lot of social media. I mean, my Twitter is really lame, but my Twitter's like the worst of them. But, I think our Instagram has the most following. It's like over 5,000. And then Facebook, we're on TikTok. I think TikTok's over 1,000 now. Streaming the music, sharing the music.
The music is so good. I mean, looking at some of your previous videos that you have on your website. If you haven't,
I appreciate it.
Go to thesavagemusical.com. Check out some of the videos that they've done. I mean, the words, Nicolette, I got goosebumps just listening to these. And the cast that you have you're working with, very top notch.
Yeah, and they're local. They're not like Broadway people, which I love. In fact, the EP we have out is all these local people who are in the show. I'm debating whether I just put a whole album out. I was in talks with a producer who talked about possibly seeing if we can get Broadway Records to do a full album of our show, like a concept album, which I would be totally up for. But yeah, streaming the music, sharing it. If you know anyone who's a female producer and I think that's another thing. This is a big show. Like, and I got to be honest, like, I am so tired of the jukebox musicals. I'm tired of the movie to musicals. I understand that it makes instant money and the producers know that they're going to get a paycheck. I understand that, but there's so much new work out there, female run stories, written stories. And we all know that we're underrepresented in Broadway, not to mention Native Americans. And in my show, I have my tribe, the Chickasaw tribe, our language is endangered, and our language is actually very similar to Choctaw. Yeah, we have some of the same words. And our language is endangered. So I have 65 of the Chickasaw words in our show.
Oh,
And we did
wow.
it in a way so that like, you know what they're saying. So like if I say chokma and someone else says hello, you know, they're saying hello. So we've done it in a way that you could understand. But also this show is not a Native American show like you would think of with people in buckskin and feathers, and
Right.
like it's not that. It happens to be a Native American woman in a modern setting, in a
Right.
modern world. We only have like 2 scenes in the actual tribe, and
Mm.
it's in the 1900s, so they're in 1900s clothes, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
So you have to keep that in mind going forward with the idea of the show. But what was we were sorry, I went off the rails there. So yeah, I mean, if people just want to share and support us and come see the show if you can, like it's the cheapest you will ever see the show, because
Very
the
true.
tickets at the community theater, and it's a beautiful theater, it's brand new, it's 540 seats. Jaduk Theater is a beautiful theater, and if you're into new musicals or watching something as it grows, this is a great opportunity.
Congratulations, Nicolette, for
Thank you.
all of the work that you've been putting into the show.
Thanks.
I know it takes a lot, and I appreciate you being, you know, transparent with us and vulnerable to tell us it's a lot. You're tired, and I could get it, and you're the
It's rewarding though. It's rewarding. I mean, I love
Of
doing
course,
it, you
of
know.
course. But I think we
so love it.
see a Hollywood version of like, oh yeah, you just like write this and then it comes together and you're Broadway. It's like, no. This is what we're trying to show you. Everyone that's listening, it's behind the curtain. This is really the raw truth of how this comes together. And I think you've got Wanda's determination, Nicolette. I think that
Thank you. I guess that is something I inherited. Just to what you're saying about shows, it takes on average 6 years, six to 10 years for a Broadway show to get to Broadway. And that includes writing, that includes, you know, maybe you go to regional theater, community theater, whatever you do, and you're not getting paid. I mean, you're not getting paid while you're going along. I mean, it's a labor of love. Definitely. Yeah. And I love that you're doing this for women and like advocating for women, and we are definitely an underrepresented voice in Broadway, and it's time for us to be heard, and it's time for, I hope I don't make anybody mad, but it's time for men to stop writing stories about women. Let the women write it.
Yeah, because it's though the story through a woman's eyes is different, maybe from a story from a man's perspective. And I think that you see that a lot in opera, you see that a lot in Broadway. So I'm like, okay, women, this is a recruit from me and Nicolette. Like, please
Yes,
put the pen to paper. Please tell these stories.
there's a site called Maestra, and it is all, are you on there? It's all women musicians.
Wow.
So, and women composers and all kind of women. So you should get on there because you play an instrument.
There we go.
But they're advocating for women music directors and composers and writers and all of that. And there's been a lot of shows recently, without saying names, that are about women, that are big Broadway shows that were written by men, and all the creative team is men.
It's like, okay,
nothing wrong with men. I love men.
I love men. There's
yes,
great people that are men, but I think what we're trying to say is like, let's make room.
Yes,
and stay in the room. You know, support us, but let's make room for more voices, different come froms, more women, etc., and different diversities, right? Native Americans, etc.
Yeah.
Well, Nicolette, thank you so much for taking us behind the curtain of your new Savage the Musical. I cannot wait to see videos and press and all these amazing things that's going to come from the opening on April 1st to the 3rd. And if you're listening in, you're close to Massachusetts, please go for me, go for I want to check it out. And then if you are not close to Massachusetts, check out their social media, the Savage the Musical or savagethemusical.com, where you can see their videos, stream their music. But Nicolette, we are championing you along here at Red Curtain Addict. We are so excited for you, for what's to come.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate the time to talk with you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And for all those wanting to see some of our previous Behind the Curtains, you can check those out at redcurtainaddict.com. Have a great evening.